Welcome back to Mind Your Biz. My name is Seth, and in today's privacy chat, I have the great pleasure of bringing back, well, actually, this person hasn't come back for the third or fourth time, but the project is coming back. You know it, you love it. First time I covered it, it was when it was still an early opportunity to mine a secret hidden gem in proof of work and was still called Loki. It is now OXEN, and I have with me Key Jeffries. Key, welcome to Mind Your Biz.
Hey Seth, I think OXEN is still a hidden gem. So we've got the opportunity to have another crack at it, I would say.
Yeah, no, I stand corrected, and you're absolutely right. There's so much of the crypto ecosystem, and in particular privacy, that if people were really paying attention to what the world needs, they would see it as a hidden gem as well. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's, for the benefit of the Mind Your Biz audience who has never met you before, they've met Simon and other members of the team, Simon and Josh. And I think they've also met part of the development team. So, but they've never met you. Tell us about who Key Jeffries is, in a nutshell.
Yeah, we seem to be reoccurring visitors on the Mind Your Biz kind of YouTube channel, so it's good to be back again. I'm the CTO at OXEN, and formerly called Loki, which you guys would have run into a few years ago. So I just manage all the development, the team, the architecture of our projects that we're building. So yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and it's always great to talk to a CTO, somebody who has that the bird's eye view of what's going on, right? They can speak to the high level and architecture of what's being built, the grand vision, but then also enough of the tech that we're not left wanting there. I answer all the questions. So appreciate your time. And I know that the time difference does make this a little bit more onerous for you than it does for me. So really, my family thanks you. Yeah, we're on our spring break, and the kids are already a little upside down. So thank you again. But
no worries.
Let's talk a little bit about the problem domain. So as you see it, or as the OXEN core team sees it, what is the problem with privacy? What do people get wrong about privacy or misunderstand?
Well, I think when we started in 2018, we were looking at a whole bunch of, blockchain at the time was kind of a disconnected idea from some of the privacy ecosystems that were developing. So you saw tools like TOR or Signal that were developing, but they weren't really linked into the decentralized, incentivized networks that blockchain could create. So we saw this idea that you could have an incentivized network where you'd have a certain number of nodes, and in OXEN that's about 1,800 nodes, which are rewarded for providing kind of the backbone for this privacy network. And I think that's where we saw the gap in the market was, there were services like Tor or Signal where it would be run like by a centralized foundation that rely on donations, that rely on volunteers. We thought, well, hang on, you have this network where you can incentivize people. Why don't we apply that to a privacy network and see what pops out? And apparently what popped out was like Session and LokiNet and all these cool tools that, have, half a million users now. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's bring up a visual aid here. You mentioned Session, which is, I think, the primary commercial offering of this whole ecosystem, or I guess consumer offering. I shouldn't say commercial. It's open source. It's free to use.
Yes.
On the user side. So when most people think of commercial software, I think it's so hard. It's hard for most consumers to even know the differences anymore between something that's free to use, something that's fully open source, top to bottom, and then something that has a much more involved infrastructure, network, node infrastructure behind it, and then the marriage of the I2P stack with some other pieces of tech. I mean, I know that OXEN has, it's way more complicated under the hood than I think most people understand at first glance. So yeah, I think I shouldn't call it a commercial offering. But anyway, there are a few rabbit holes here. Yeah. Where to start? I guess the big question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of hesitancy when people see free applications these days, because they immediately connect like with free, like, oh, I'm the customer, or like, they're selling my data basically. We're not doing that because we're an open source application and we're a not-for-profit as well. So we don't have an incentive to collect people's data and sell it.
Yeah, that's like the least sexy thing you can say to a VC these days. We have no customer data to sell you, and we also are looking at setting up a nonprofit foundation. They're like, get away.
Yeah. So I mean, the product Session, which is our biggest product, it's an encrypted messaging application. So you can use it to send messaging applications just as you would with WhatsApp or a Facebook Messenger or Signal or something like that. But the unique characteristics of it is that it doesn't have any phone numbers to register a new account. So you just sign up a new account, you generate a key. It's basically like generating a wallet, which many of your subscribers would be familiar with the process. It's decentralized, so there's no central server that stores all of the message contents. It's essentially like a decentralized network of 1,800 nodes where you route messages through. And the final thing is onion routing as well. So instead of your messages flowing directly to the other person, we bounce through a number of hops to hide your IP address. So it really is focusing on being a privacy encrypted messenger with very minimal metadata being exposed. So it really takes something like Signal and goes to the next level on it, essentially.
That's awesome. So on that note of being maybe comparable to Signal, because I believe it shares quite a bit of code with Signal, right? The Whisper systems, the user experience. I know that at some point there was a beta that allowed for voice and video calling. I think it's still out there in the wild. Certainly the APK on Android I think it's the only one that I have on my device. But it doesn't appear to have gone into the main offering. So without getting too much in the weeds, for anybody who's already familiar with Session, is there any kind of a roadmap to bring that back? Are there bandwidth constraints? I mean, I think people would understand that among 1,800 nodes, that flawless operation of a simpler offering is probably preferable to, spotty operation of a really advanced feature set. But if you wouldn't mind a little bit, because Session is so visible, it's such a visible part of the ecosystem, you mind speaking to the user experience a little bit and what the feedback has been?
Yeah, totally. Specifically on voice and video calls, they are in the application right now, so you can use them. But the way that we're doing things right now is direct peer-to-peer. So that is decentralized in its nature. The issue with direct peer-to-peer connections is if you're trying to hide who you are or try to hide metadata about yourself, if you connect directly to another person, then you're giving up information about your IP address, for example, which you might not necessarily want to expose. So we're developing, I mean, we'll also talk about LokiNet, but what we're trying to do is develop a more robust onion routing system that we will put into Session eventually. Right now, we're using kind of this baby onion routing system, which is able to handle a bit of data, but not able to handle the data that would be required to do a voice or a video call. The idea is that we'll be able to fully implement LokiNet into Session soon, and we're working towards that. So hopefully we will be able to have onion routed video and voice calls, but right now it's just peer-to-peer. Still decentralized, but not as privacy preserving, and we tell people that before they start a call as well.
Got it. Okay, so it does break the security and the data routing, that data routing protocol then, but when you choose to go that route.
There's a big warning that says when you try and do a video or voice call and it's disabled by default, you have to turn it on, and it says this will expose your IP address potentially. So we're very upfront about that, but it's something that people want in the application now, and if they're happy to make that choice about what they want to do, then we're fine giving them that option, I think.
Got it. Okay. It seems like with voice and video calls, the packets are ephemeral anyhow. So as long as there's no party in the middle, that does fit some people's threat model.
Well, it's still encrypted. It's still end-to-end encrypted, right? So
yeah.
The people on both ends are the only people who can, I guess, decode the video and voice packets. The thing is, you are exposing your IP address to the other person you're talking to. So if that's something that you don't want to do, you don't want to give that metadata to them, then you may choose to not do that potentially.
Okay. So it sounds like then to the current user experience to achieve another layer of privacy, then you would have to use a VPN or multi-hop or just route it some other way then, if you're going to be doing voice and video.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. Well, there you have it. That for me is my comfort level, and it fits my threat model. I'm not too worried about nation state actors. Maybe I should be a tiny bit more worried about nation being, doing what I do, like very visible, talking about privacy and crypto. So I'm likely on some international watch lists already. I mean, I don't know. Interpol hasn't stopped me when I travel, so I'm not worried yet. But
I'm ordering the drone strike to your house as we speak. So
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. We're pretty good about not drone striking our own citizens here. In the United States, we still at least pretend that we're free. I don't know. And if they're within sniper rifle range, we've got an answer for that too. But the Second Amendment still exists here. So let's move on though. As far as the ecosystem, OXEN is that. I mean, this is the incentivization layer, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me a little about OXEN, LokiNet, and then something that I stumbled across for the first time. I wasn't aware of it before, the OPTF, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so Session is kind of our biggest premier application, has about 600,000 users, I think, at this point. But and LokiNet is another application as well. But they're all built on the core of OXEN. And OXEN is originally a fork of Monero. It still is a fork of Monero. We share a lot of code with them. So it's a privacy point. But it has a proof of stake node system built on top of it. Probably most similar to something like Dash, where you have these kind of master node systems. It used to be a very big project, Dash. So when I talk about it these days, not that many people know about it, but there's a very big project in 2018. It kind of had this idea of like building a network of incentivized nodes on top of a cryptocurrency. So that's essentially what we did with OXEN, which is a privacy coin. And those nodes run the services that people use per session. So they store messages per session, they route messages per session, they route messages for LokiNet. They also build the entire blockchain, create new blocks, it's proof of stake. So they have a very important role in securing the ecosystem and ensuring that those nodes are rewarded for the work they do as well. It's not a volunteer system to run an OXEN node. If you want to make some money, you can run an OXEN node, and you can also give people better privacy by providing those services. So it's kind of like a win-win for people who are interested in privacy.
Yeah, and it sounds like there is no delegated proof of stake system within the ecosystem today. Like, in order to receive staking rewards, it does require that you have an investment in infrastructure, if I'm not mistaken.
So we don't have direct delegated proof of stake, but what we do have is that you can contribute a portion of a stake to another person's node. So if someone wants to set up a node, the normal requirement is 15,000 OXEN, but multiple people can come together. So I think right now it's up to 10 operators can come together. So you may only have 2,000 OXEN, for example, but if you get together with all of your friends, you can have up to 10 people join together and create a node. One person runs it, but the other people kind of contribute to it.
Okay, got it. So there is a way. It sounds more like it's a split node system, more so than you already said it's not delegated proof of stake as such. You can't just have an infinite number of stakers that are all choosing to delegate to one node. Okay, that's great. I guess for whatever reason that I'd missed that detail before, and in my mind I don't see this as being at odds with any other kind of proof of work. I mean, you do have to get involved in the supporting infrastructure, and it's useful work, right? It's useful infrastructure. I remember in 2018 speaking to Daniel Keller from the Flux project. I'm sure you're aware of him, right? If you haven't interacted with him, different project. I apologize. This is OXEN's time, but in 2018, useful work was kind of the buzzword. Proof of useful work was a bit of a buzzword, but having node infrastructure that's useful, I mean, public clouds already existed. So having that be a decentralized layer that people could be incentivized to support, it just makes sense. It really does make a lot more sense than, getting 3 airplane hangars filled with deprecated GPUs.
Yeah.
Like, who needs that? Nobody.
Well,
literally.
I always thought that as well. So it's good to have people. I mean, I think originally the idea was called kind of proof of service in Dash, where you would kind of provide a service to the network and you would get paid for doing that. So It's a pretty understandable model as well.
Yeah, well, in Dash, it is, I don't know, proof of bean counting in my mind. It's like, how many times do you need to duplicate the ledger? I mean, double entry bookkeeping kind of changed the world. If blockchain can be considered triple entry bookkeeping, then how many copies of the third entry do you need before you can claim it's secure? I don't know. I'm not qualified to answer the question.
Yeah, I think that was one of the issues with Dash, was especially early on in 2018, they were essentially running the system where they would incentivize these nodes to hold a copy of the blockchain. But it's like, what else are they doing? Like, we already have full nodes, people run them. They don't need to be incentivized to do that. Like, it just didn't seem that useful, you know. And then they added
maybe a hybrid system. Yeah, maybe there's a case for a certain amount of redundancy there. But anyway, without getting too far in the weeds there, I kind of showed off the OXEN site there. Didn't show off the lokinet.org site here, and I've defaulted to dark mode like any sane person would. But Lokinet, this is the to explain it poorly, as I understand it, this is kind of the orchestration layer, right, for accessing that node network. Is that about right?
There is an orchestration layer which exists that's apart from Lokinet. Usually I kind of explain Lokinet as it's a general purpose onion router. So maybe some of your viewers would be familiar with Tor, which is a really popular tool to anonymously access the internet. And Lokinet is doing a much a similar job to Tor. It's doing it in a different way architecturally, and has some advantages and disadvantages versus Tor. It's more versatile than Tor. It can carry more protocols than Tor can, and we're trying to push it to be more performant than Tor as well. But yeah, this is really a backbone we want it to be a backbone to Session. We want to plug this into Session to give it all of the onion routing capabilities that we're looking for. But also it's a product on its own it acts, you can access the internet through Lokinet anonymously. And I know a lot of people in China are using it. One of our developers recently had to go to China and was using it as the only resource he could use to break the Great Firewall. So,
jeez, no, that's amazing, phenomenal. And I'm wondering how many public reviews do you have of Lokinet used in this application or used in this way, just as a Tor replacement?
Yeah, I mean, Lokinet still hasn't had its kind of heyday, I would say. It's still yet to come. It hasn't received too much public attention yet, and I think that's the nature of it. It's a bit harder to get across. You can't download it in the App Store right now. You have to download it as a desktop application. It doesn't have that kind of mass market effect. And then even when we look at, like, say, Tor is like fairly popular. Most people know about it. But when you look at it compared to Signal, for example, like the proportions are just completely different. It's like so many users of private messages versus less users of kind of anonymized routing systems.
It's strange though. It seems like VPN usage is at an all-time high, to the point that there are, all the free, honeypot systems that are out there, or cheap honeypot VPN providers that are out there. I think most people have a general understanding that there's a need for enhanced privacy, and they are looking for that one click or that simple install. And VPNs seem to be enjoying their moment, certainly. So I wonder if maybe Lokinet could be positioned in that way to more people. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because Lokinet does kind of act a bit more like a VPN than Tor does. When you turn Lokinet on, it tunnels all of your traffic through Lokinet instead of just Tor browser traffic. So it does actually work more like a VPN, but I think we haven't been able to get out in front of the customers that we've wanted to. I know VPNs have been having like a really aggressive strategy, like sponsoring a lot of YouTube people. And that seems to have been really effective in raising the profile. So maybe that's something that we should look into as well. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, just a thought. It seems like, most VPNs are, I'll just come out and say it. Most VPNs are absolute garbage, and they're, and they, bare minimum, they share their data with 3-letter agencies here in the United States, or the Five Eyes nations, right? Yours as well. And this is kind of the open secret of most VPNs, is that they're garbage. They're not good. A lot of them. And there's a limited set of them, the commercial VPNs that are any good. And then it's hard for most people to roll their own, so to speak, on public cloud. And even if you did, the IP endpoints are flagged by most other services because they see that very clearly that it's an AWS IP address or GCP or whatever. So without getting too nerdy there, a lot of VPNs are garbage. I would love to see a more viable alternative for privacy. Now, I'm making myself late for an appointment that I warned you about. But if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about the OPTF. This is news to me. What is this, and what's the OXEN team's hope for the OPTF?
So actually, the OPTF, under a different name, it used to be called the Loki Foundation, has been around since 2018. And basically, this is the legal structure for which OXEN is registered under. So we're actually registered as a non-for-profit in Australia. And that's how we've been running since 2018. Been audited a bunch of times as well, so we're not doing anything shady here. Basically, we took all of the money from the raise and put it into this foundation and have been trying to kind of develop these privacy enhancing applications. And, the session exists now. So we're really working towards our mission of providing privacy education and human rights worldwide. And we've been working with some of our partners as well, the OPTF, to try and get access to some of those more humanitarianly challenged areas. For example, Iran was really big for us in session growth. When the Iran protests kicked off, we had about 400,000 or 500,000 session users come online within days, and wow. A lot of people are using this to communicate throughout the Iranian Revolution, and that a lot of that was to do with our relationships through the OPTF in Iran. So yeah, I mean, session has a really strong humanitarian outreach and purpose as well. So that's mainly what we do through the OPTF, and also pay for the development for all of these applications we're building too.
Got it. Okay, that's phenomenal. And is there a desire for greater partnership among other development teams or other tech stacks that are privacy oriented, or what is that looking like today as far as outreach to other technology groups?
Yeah, the OPTF has worked with a few people. We've worked on Ricochet briefly a few years ago. And we also worked on a kind of disinformation tool for another company. Not to create disinformation, by the way, just to report it into this other system. But yeah, it was interesting doing those kinds of work that weren't necessarily session stuff that we focus on every day. But we're also working with a bunch of partner organizations and always interested in funding different privacy enhancing products as well that we can do through the OPTF. So I think on our website, we have like a funding thing where you can send in an application if you're working on a privacy enhancing project, and we'll get back to you if we think it's within our purview. So yeah, it's really cool stuff that's going on there. Okay,
phenomenal. Well, Key, I've kept you longer than I said that I would, but I really appreciate you going the extra mile and showing us all a bit about more about the ecosystem that OXEN has been building over the years. The Mind Your Biz community knows. I felt like it was an early discovery back when it was Loki in early 2018, not long after launch, and so it's been a pleasure for me to be witness to the journey that the entire team has gone through, despite having done that multi-million-dollar raise initially. And I know that the team caught grief for that. It's still been a massive opportunity, and I think the cause of privacy more than warrants the private investment, and then the interest from the community to create that infrastructure and to contribute ongoing resources to the cause of privacy. Certainly, it sounds like with the uptake in Iran, there's a need for it, and it's self-evident that if these tools work, that they should be used. So very excited to see you guys continuing to develop. What is an upcoming date or roadmap item that we should look forward to?
So we're pushing session really hard right now, and we're releasing a bunch of new features. So we're overhauling disappearing messages probably in the next, I'd say, month or two, overhauling configuration messages, and then doing a massive overhaul to closed groups as well. So we're really focusing on the core of the application, trying to make it better. So I would say, like, over the next 3 months, really look out for what we're doing on session. if you have tried it previously and you want to try it again, I would say in the next couple of months is probably the best time to have a go at it again. But yeah, I mean, we're going to be here. We're going to keep building. I think there were people who were concerned in 2018 when we initially raised, thinking that we were going to run away with the money or whatever. But we're here 5 years later, all a little bit older for it, and still building. So hopefully we'll be here in another 5 years.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you for this time to do yet another interview with Mind Your Biz. And yes, all my regards to the rest of the team. Key, thank you. Yeah, as always, it's been a pleasure just catching up with the OXEN team.
Thank you so much, Seth.